Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the greatest show on earth. Today, we are going to be talking about quite a few 3D printing things. I am Chris, aka Mr. Carol Science. This guy right here to my left is
Aaron, aka the handy outdoor nerd, and I got a sexy gentleman over here, and his name is...
I'm Josh, got bored, because I get bored, and I make stuff.
Oh, ha.
That's cool.
So there you go. So today, I've been working on this all week, and I've asked these two lovely gentlemen to help me in my endeavor. I'm not necessarily I wouldn't call myself like a beginner 3D printer, because I have owned 5 different 3D printers. I have access to 5 3D printers right now. They're ones that I'm constantly tinkering with, working with all the time. But one thing that I don't have any experience with is tabletop gaming. As a kid, I grew up kind of in that realm where we played games, but it was usually, so there's an age gap. So I have, my parents, and then I have an older brother, another older brother, and then I have an older sister. And then there's a 4-year age gap between my sister and I, and then I have a younger brother. And so because of that age gap, a lot of times what would happen on family game night is my parents and my 3 older siblings would play a game together, and then it was always, you 2 little boys go play. And so we were kind of left out of playing tabletop games or board games or card games. I was the one that was kind of always left out. So I've recently tried to get into tabletop gaming, and the reason why I asked Josh on the stream today is because Josh is a really good friend of mine. He happens to be a DM, and I don't know if correct me if I'm wrong. You kind of specialize in helping newbies to tabletop gaming. Is that right?
Yeah. So Dungeons and Dragons used to be like a huge thing, like in the 70s, what have you. Then it kind of petered off around the 80s, and then it's making this big comeback again, which is cool. And a lot of people are interested, but no one knows how to play. And I used to be part of a really dedicated group. We had tons of fun. And then I moved up north towards San Francisco, and there's just nobody playing. So I took it upon myself. I want to play. I need people that play. I will make people play. I will teach them. And now I get to play with people on a semi-regular-ish basis. Because, if you enjoy something and it's not where you are, make it.
Yep.
Makers, it's what we do.
Yep, that is exactly what we do.
Right. Yeah.
And actually, D&D.
Well, so on...
like legitimately, it's how I started.
There's D&D.
Yeah, no. I mean, we're gonna cover it in a bit, but you do tabletop gaming, you do miniatures, and this one's produced by Wizards of the Coast. The only problem is they're a little bit pricey, and if you're gonna DM, you need a heck of a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And that's really expensive.
Oh yes.
I mean, I've got a box of few hundred, well, somewhere in that ballpark, and yeah,
like what, $8 to $15 a pop, depending on your mini.
Depending on if it's a special one or not. For example, let me pull one. So this individual one was part of a 6-pack that cost $15, not bad. However, this exact one in a pure gold with some red accenting ones is worth $50 by itself because of the paint job.
Wow.
Yeah. Whereas if I 3D print one, I'm using maybe 5 cents worth of filament. And, when I first started, I couldn't really go whole hog on these because the wife would murder me. And I started using chess pieces, and a friend of mine liked that idea. And he's like, yeah, but I'm going to 3D print them. And I'm like, you have a 3D printer? And he goes, no. And I'm like, you know how to use a 3D printer? And he goes, no. And I'm like, so you know how to model? And he goes, no. And then I go, so you have like no aspect of. So then I got curious, started to look into it. And that's actually how I met Jimmy. I knew him through people. I actually worked with his brother, and someone went, Jimmy 3D prints, and then I started talking to Jimmy, and now I'm talking to people on the internet about 3D printing because, you know, it's like heroin. You just get a little bit and you just keep going. Female heroes, you start reading fiction and
3D printing really is kind of an addicting hobby, because once you start doing something, you just can't stop. You know, you look at, you sit there and watch the first layer of 3D printer and you just kind of stare at it. And then after a couple of hours, you realize that you're still sitting there staring at it. And it's really, really an addicting process. So if you guys don't know Jimmy Shaw's Tidbits, he is a really good friend of ours, and so you should definitely go check out his channel if you get the chance to. So over the course of this last week, I've been doing a couple of experiments. This is my very first foray, as it were, into 3D printing miniature figures. If you have any knowledge of our stream, you know that you don't really ask me to design anything because it just won't come out very good.
He's
not
trying
very
to politely
talented.
say that he sucks at modeling things.
I really do. Let me tell you.
How nice you are to each other. That's my favorite thing about you guys.
I'm gonna tell you, like,
we're what to each other?
So nice and awesome and uplifting to each other all the times.
Well,
Yeah,
if you're not straightforward with your friends, then you're not truly being a friend. If you're not being honest with them,
you can't be honest with friends. Who can you be honest with, right?
He does actually model stuff, and it does turn out pretty good. He's got to take his time.
I'm modeling.
Just don't ask him to do a likeness of you.
Oh my gosh, I wish I had that picture. I'm on my laptop, my new laptop. I don't have that picture saved to it, but I will find it. I'm going to make it the thumbnail of this episode. So anyways, because I'm not very good at modeling stuff, I have some friends that a few years ago, they had asked me, because they knew that I was into 3D printing, and they said, hey, Chris, can you 3D print some minifigures for us to play some Dungeons and Dragons? And I said, you know, I've never done it before. I don't know how good how good it'll turn out, but you know, I'll try my best. And they said, we just need a few models. Would you be able to do that? We'd be willing to pay you for it. And I said, no. I'm not one that likes to have people pay me to make them stuff, because if it's not what they like 100% or whatever, then, you know, if they don't feel 100% satisfied, then I'll feel bad. And I don't like exchanging money for it. For me, it's just like, you know, you do friendly things, right? So they sent me a couple of them. They said, we really would like to start out with these like 5 models. And they said, how many models can you print for us? And I said, you know, just send me whatever you want and I'll just print whatever. Thinking, you know, even if they wanted me to print like 10 minifigures, you know, like Josh was saying, what is it, like 5 cents each? It's not going to cost me anything. And
it's mostly just time. It's mostly time.
It's just, it's just time. I just said, you know, it might take a while for me to get them, but you know, just send me what you want and I'll just do whatever I can. So they sent me, you know, 5. We really want to start with these 5. These are our main characters. If you could print them, then that'd be great. And I said, okay. So I started trying these prints, but I didn't have any idea what I was doing. They were mostly failing. And then they started sending me more emails. They're like, well, we need a couple of these, and we need a couple of these, we need a couple of these, we need a couple of these. And it got to the point where I think I counted up, they wanted somewhere in the realm of 2,000 minifigures printed.
That's a lot of time.
I mean, it's just
perspective. That hasn't printed a mini, that's about 45, 48 minutes.
Depending. Okay, so.
Well, layer height and speed.
I printed these guys with a 0.2 millimeter nozzle.
Yeah, that'll add some fun.
To try to get the most details possible, because I've done them at a 0.4. But the better resolution you can get with an FDM printer is the lower nozzle you can get.
So that's like a 0.4. So yeah, his is definitely going to come out nicer.
Mm-hmm. So that took hours to print those. And this swashbuckler, the sword's broken, but I couldn't print this fine one on an FDM. So what I did was I just cut it off in a slicer, and then I took my filament, heated it up with my heat gun, and then just stretched it, moved it away, and then let it dry, and then I just snipped it and then glued it on.
Yep, sounds about right.
Because it's an FDM. It wasn't going to print it.
Yep.
I tried. I wasn't just going to go, oh, well, let's just not try. No, I tried.
Yeah, I've tried.
One thing that a lot of people don't understand.
What were you saying, Chris?
One thing that a lot of people don't understand is when you are trying to make something twice as large, so you're going to print something 200% size, you got to remember this is 3-dimensional printing, which means you are increasing the size of that model by 2 times on every axis. So you're looking at 2 times as wide and 2 times as long and 2 times as tall. So in fact, it's not 2 times the size, it's actually 8 times the size when you print something that's at 200% scale. So when you print something really, really big, it takes a long, long time. Anyways, I want to talk to you guys about my adventures over the course of this last week. So I looked up those old emails because I never printed those models for those people. It just was an impossibility. Even with 5 printers at my disposal, it was just impossible. I couldn't do it. So I looked up those models.
2,000.
And as I was looking, I pulled up one model that you really can't see super well. Let me see if I can find the best one because none of these are great. I printed this one model 4 different times, and here's why. I printed this model 4 times because I wanted to print it in 4 different orientations. And so the first tip that I would have for anybody who's looking at printing miniature figures is, and you guys might disagree with me on this, but I have some really solid reasoning. So just, we can have a total discussion about this. If you're going to 3D print minifigs, you need to print at least 2 at the same time. And the reason why I say that is because when you're 3D printing something like a minifig, you have a lot of really, really small, tiny layers. For example, at the very top of a minifigure, a lot of times you're going to have its head, and its head is the most narrow part of the entire figure. So what happens is while you're trying to print them on your printer, what will happen is the hot end will draw the little circle that has its nose on it, and then it'll go up a layer and draw another circle, and then go up a layer and draw another circle. And as it continues to draw those layers, it oftentimes doesn't give the print enough time to cool down the layer before it moves on to the next layer. Now, there's a lot of different settings in your slicer that you can change for that in order to compensate for that, like a minimum layer time, and you can increase cooling and things like that. But my experience with printing small, narrow cylinders, especially things like that, is that a lot of times you'll end up with it being real blobby, and it'll kind of twist as the motion of the hot end kind of drags it around. So my recommendation, my first tip, I guess, is print at least 2 at the same time so that your printer goes to one, prints that part, and then it goes to the other one, and that gives that layer that it just printed time to cool before it comes back and prints the next layer. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
That does help for sure, but also, as I was saying, the finer nozzle you have, the better it can and will do on that. But yes, cooling is a key factor for that. So obviously the more detail you do it, the better you want it to turn out. So yeah, having multiple ones will definitely do that. And this is not even talking about resin printing, because 1, I've not done resin printing. 2, you get higher detail quality on a resin printer. Yes, Josh, show off.
Well, I didn't do it.
Well, yeah, but you've got one. So
I've got a fistful.
Um,
Yeah, no.
so that's one of the things you got to look at is the detail, and you know what? It doesn't need to be high quality. I used this Sonic the Hedgehog that I printed. You can see the string on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I used this as a stand-in character. I used pieces from Sorry as a stand-in characters. I've used it for people playing or the actual NPCs during the games, which is usually the bad guys in the dungeons or whatever that you're interacting with and attacking. And they were all different colors because you can tell which is the different one that you're going for.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. To expand on what you guys said, I don't have a general thumb, but I think printing a mini, because a lot of them are like anywhere from 25 to 30 to 40 mil on the high side.
Yep.
They really highlight any issue you're having with your printer.
Oh, they do.
I actually kept the early ones that Jimmy did, and oh my god. So this is the very first attempt. Do you see anything other than wispiness?
I don't even know what it is.
I couldn't tell you a circle.
Yeah, the support material and the actual print are indistinguishable. Another good one, I couldn't even pretend to tell you. It just went to hell. Now, he was trying to print 14 at a time, and that's where we discovered print speed's a big thing.
Yeah, no, slower. Also, yeah, that is one thing. Because they are smaller, and if you're doing a smaller nozzle, you slow and steady.
Now, a standard D&D model is going to have a little base. So when you get your initial adhesion, it's pretty good. But then you get finer and finer details. And as you can see, these second runs all snapped off during the prints. So, you know. And then another thing, like I said, the print quality really shows. So this print, I dusted in white. You can, I'm not sure how well the camera shows that there was definitely a clog in the nozzle. So you're getting these definite, really gross layer sections. And it's really rough. And you want to avoid support material like none other, because Jimmy got his hands on a liquid resin printer. This was the first one he got his hands on. And the support material just broke off and did really nasty things because he printed it like angled.
Oh, yeah.
So it didn't really work for those. So you really had to look at prints that were capable of doing it on their own. So this is one I did myself, which is a spearmint.
Great.
And as you can see, it's not a very thick spear he has there. It's 2 mil, something like that at the base. But it can be printed without support material. Now, I did it with support material just up to the spear. I gave the same thing to Chris, and he printed it without support material.
I sure did.
So really,
it came great.
Yeah, like this is actually the first one I did. And yet again, no support material. When it comes to these minis, you really have to have those settings so beautifully dialed in that everything comes across or breaks off. Because honestly, if you're not dialed in, you get something ropey, you lose all the detail, it starts to fail.
Listen, Josh, that's a great Groot, man. It looks like Groot. It looks like Groot. I think that's a great Groot, man.
I think it's actually supposed to be a voodoo character, very similar to the villain in Princess and the Frog. But like, there's sections of it I can see light through.
Yep, I've done that. I've had one that I printed, and it turned out to be like a great zombie.
Yep. But yeah, no, settings. You have to have your machine really dialed in to do minis on just with filament.
Yeah.
So some of the experiments that I ran this week were about orientation and in which orientation you should print it. So in other words, if you're trying to 3D print a minifigure, there's a lot of different ways you can print it. So the ones that Josh,
I learned,
you know, the ones that
these videos.
the ones that Josh has designed, they work really well without support material. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't think about when they are designing something for 3D printing. So the first thing that I did was I said, what's the best way? Do I want it standing up? Do I want it laying down on its side? How do I want to put this? So the first model that I tried, here's half of one. See if we can get that to focus somehow. Maybe if I put it in front of a white thing. Should not have done black. I should have taken pictures.
Yeah.
So
that's why I did a little wash.
This is a little dwarf spearman here, a little halfling something. It's supposed to have a shield as well. The problem is, you know, in order to hold a shield, it has to use its arm. And so arms for 3D printing minifigs are very, very tiny.
Yep.
Here's a little better one, I guess.
Wrists are
so
even.
arms are very, very tiny. So what I did is I took one and I just printed it straight up and down with support material. I took another one, this one here, and I laid it on its back 90 degrees so that all the support material would be on the back of the minifig so that it would maybe hopefully give a better finish to the front of the figure. I did one where I laid it on its front to see if having all of the fine details touching the support materials would help them maybe. And I did another one where I actually laid it on an angle because it's got this little tiny thin spear, and I knew that was going to be a weak point, and I said, what if I laid it on an angle so that spear was completely horizontal? Then what would happen is as the printer printed it, it would print those layer lines in the same direction that the spear was in the hopes that it would keep that spear a little bit stronger. So I printed it in those 4 different orientations, and I had none of them came out great. The one that came out the best, honestly, is the one where I had the supports on the back. You can maybe, if I can get this to work just right. This episode sponsored by Sterilite. I don't know if you can see. So I had the support materials on the back, so it didn't come out super great on the back side, but on the front side, the details actually look pretty good. You can actually see all the facial features. There's a lot of stringiness. The spear didn't hold up super well, but this is the only one that the shield actually held up. Other than the one that I printed on an angle, it actually put the shield horizontal as well. But the spears are great print quality, but this one's maybe the closest. It's not super great either, though. So I decided another tip that I would like to give anybody who is starting to do 3D printing for minis. Another tip that I would give is find models that are easier to print, because some of these models, while they look really nice to the untrained eye, to a trained 3D printer's eye, they are a nightmare, and they just require too much support material in too many difficult places, because once you get the support material where it needs to be, it's hard to get that support material out without breaking your piece. So I chose a different model. This one was called Male Sorcerer, and I did a similar thing. This one didn't have a staff. So because it didn't have a staff, I just printed it in 3 orientations. I printed one just standing straight up. I printed one on its back and one on its front. The one on its front doesn't look too bad. I mean, it's not great. Oh, man. bring back my little Sterilite sponsored ad here. So it's not too bad. It's not great, but it's not the worst. But you can definitely see where all the support materials were sitting. The one with the supports on the back looks really similar. I'm still getting lots of stringing. And one thing that I'm noticing, and I think this is a problem with Cura, and I've known this to be a thing for a while, is Cura doesn't use the same settings for support materials as it does for the actual printed part. And so things like retraction and things like that, Cura doesn't bother with retraction because it's like, what do you need retraction for? You don't need your supports to look nice. The problem is when you don't use retraction with the support material, then a lot of times that support material bleeds into the actual printed part. Yep. And then you end up with a lot of stringing between the support and the part, and then it becomes even more difficult to take apart. And then I printed one just standing up with support material, and it actually looks okay, but because that's where the layer lines go, the feet broke right off of the pedestal. This is probably the best looking one, but it was really weak because it has some really, really thin weak points right at the ankles, which could be fixed if the model were designed a little bit more for 3D printing. Yeah, so just for fun, I tried printing one without any supports at all, just standing up without supports, because the way the model looks, it looked like it might actually print kind of okay, and it actually didn't do that bad. You can't see. I definitely need to fix this. There we go. You can kind of see. Yeah. It really doesn't look that bad. Printed without any support materials added. The base broke off. It just, those ankles were just too small and weak to support it. So then going back to choosing a model that's a little bit better. Hey Brian, how you doing today? Good to see you, man. Going back to choosing a better model. I printed a couple of models that Josh sent me. I printed some on my Ender 3, and I printed some on my Monoprice Select Mini. And something that I was really surprised with is my Monoprice, I know, doesn't have the best cooling. It's not super great, but I printed this one without any supports at all, just to see if it would print. And it turns out, oops, that it does. And it has a little bit of stringing and stuff, especially on the back side where there wasn't very as good of cooling. There we go. There wasn't very much cooling on the back, and so it did end up with some stringiness and stuff on the back side. But it actually did okay. And then I printed this pikeman, and again, similar story. It came out pretty not bad. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but it printed okay. There we go. There we go. It printed okay. So that was on my Monoprice, and it's, what's funny is that the Monoprice actually prints at a 0.1313 layer height. And it's such a specific number because it uses a weird stepper motor for the Z-axis. And so it prints at a 0.13 layer height standard, and that's just kind of the way that it is. And I don't like to mess with that number because once I change that number, my prints start to look a little whack. So then, because I knew that it was going to print okay on the Monoprice, and I know that my Ender 3 prints a little bit nicer, I decided to try something else because I knew another tip. You guys are going to hate this. You guys are going to think this is the worst tip ever, but I'm telling you right now, this right here is genius, okay? When you print minifigs, you should use a taller layer height than you think. And here's why I say that. Because when you use really, really tiny layer heights, especially if you're using support material, the layer lines are so thin that they become really, really brittle. And so parts will actually be stronger if you use higher layer heights than they will if you use lower layer heights. And so one of the issues that I was having with that other figure is the the models kept breaking off the base because I was using a 0.08 layer height. I was like, I want to get some really high quality definition on these things. So I printed this pipe, man, that I just printed in the 0.1313 layer height. I printed it on my Ender 3, and this right here, ladies and gentlemen, is what it looks like printed with a 0.2 layer height. This is just a standard 0.2 layer height that most printers work with, and it looks just about perfect.
I have to agree with you.
And so the difference between
0.1. So this one's at 0.1, same model.
Well,
and I don't see a huge difference between the two.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is that between a 0.2 and a 0.1 layer height, you don't notice a huge difference, but where you will notice a difference is in the strength of the part.
Yeah.
And so even though you are looking at a much higher resolution, one thing that you need to understand about the nature of 3D printing is you're never really going to get to a point with an FDM 3D printer like we use that you're going to completely eliminate layer lines. Yep. And when you're talking about a 0.2 millimeter layer height, you're talking about that is 5 layers in the space of 1 millimeter, which is something that's so almost imperceptible to your eye. So one thing that this is going to do is it's going to print slightly faster, but the drop in quality, while it still may be noticeable, it's not going to be as relevant as you think. Because another thing, my last tip, what I learned from 3D printing these models is don't concern yourself so much with perfection, because the way that FDM 3D printers, you're just not going to get something that is absolutely, utterly perfect. And so I printed these models that Josh sent me at a 0.2 layer height, which is a standard for like 99% of FDM printers out there. And I think that with the 0.2 layer height, my 0.2 layer height came out better than the 0.13 layer height on my mono. And that's just due to the fact that my monoprice is just not as good a printer as the Ender 3 is. And so to sum up my experience, what I learned is, number one, try to find a model that doesn't require as many supports.
Yep.
And trust the source where your model came from. Because if it's a model that's never been printed before, or if it wasn't designed for 3D printing, it's very possible that you're going to have a hard time printing it with an FDM printer.
Yep.
Another thing would be go really slow, because my models that I printed that finally came out good, I printed them at about 30 millimeters a second, which isn't super slow, but generally speaking, most printers I think are tuned to run at about 60 millimeters a second. Like 50, 60 is pretty standard, and you can go faster than that. I know a lot of people that run their printers at 80 or 100 millimeters a second, and there are some printers that are tuned to run at 250, 300 millimeters a second, which is just absolute madness. But going slow definitely helps, and so if you're going to print minifigs, if you want help in going slow, print at least 2 at the same time, and then slow your speed down. That'll give the layers enough time to cool, and your print quality is going to increase. And then the last one is, don't stress too much about it being perfect, and maybe use a slightly taller layer height, especially if you're having a lot of failures with your print. It could just be that your printer isn't calibrated or tuned properly so that it'll actually accept a 0.08 layer height. Maybe my Ender 3 just really isn't tuned to be able to do that, right? And so if it's a little bit sloppy and you're trying to make it run at a really, really low layer height, you can run into a lot of issues. And so the best print that I got by far was a model that was designed to be printed without supports by Josh, at a 0.2 millimeter layer height at about 30 millimeters a second when I printed 2 at the same time. What do you guys got? that's what I got. You're totally can argue with me and tell me I'm 100% wrong. But that was my experience today.
Well, the thing is, there's no exact accurate way to do it with an FDM printer that's going to give you 100% efficiency and quality on the outcome. Okay, so last week on the show, week before that, I was printing this guy. Little baby dragon to hold my Wacom pen for my bamboo. Even with supports for the tail, because I wasn't going to do that without supports. You can see there. And then let's turn this flashlight on for it. Let's see.
She was blinded by the light.
Can't really see the most of it. I cleaned it up, but the under the arm. Let's see, you can kind of see it there.
A little bit of spaghetti.
Oh yeah, there's spaghetti. And the person that designed this said, "Oh well, wasn't saying much on supports." And I'm sorry, but that head needs supports.
Yep.
I put supports in manually in was it Flashford's? Was it Flash Finder? Oh, come on, the Flash Print. And right here under this cheek had some spaghetti because I didn't get supports in there. But yeah, under this arm had spaghetti. It's just when someone says, "Oh no, supports," but I'm looking at a model and he doesn't mention that he's going to need supports here. And I know from printing for, was it 4 years now, that yeah, I'm going to need supports for something that has that big of an overhang.
Yep.
Aaron,
unless it was resting.
I think you could do it without supports.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't have supports under the chin on that side, and it strung. I didn't have supports under the arms, and there was string.
Yeah.
I had under my ears, since my ears are thinner, and on the tail, and then just a couple of spots up here, because this lip that has that overhang that you're not gonna have it where it's not gonna catch and string.
Here's what I think about supports in those areas. My experience now, this is just my opinion. My experience with supports in areas like that is sometimes a little tiny itty bitty bit of spaghetti stringing. Yep. Looks better than their crappy supports have interfaced.
Yep.
The model. You guys know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, and I agree. There are spots that
absolutely
stringing helps.
I would much rather have a little bit of stringing. There's a model, a dragon model. Is it Turnkarn's dragon?
Yep.
I think so. There's Turnkarn's dragon. It prints without supports, and the chin gets a little bit stringy. But you know what? Those little strings kind of make it look like a beard on the dragon. That one.
Yeah.
That one. Only the one that I printed is a lot bigger.
Yeah.
But that's good for having as many.
The chin.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's. I mean, I don't know what the appropriate size a dragon is in Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, you can have a baby dragon for it. So.
Yeah. Just to go off what Chris and Aaron said, the supports are, yeah, they're a double-edged sword. So this is a model I got off Tinkercad, and you can see it's a swordsman. And this sword will fail every time without support material. And the problem is that looks like a decent gap, but it really isn't once you try and get some sort of pliers in or even a blade. I mean, it's super glued together. Another model, I used a 3D pen to put it back together. So what I like to do is sort of like what Aaron hinted at and put your own support in. So I did the sorcerer also, which is, you can probably see the one arm more or less failed. Like, this is not a joint. That is held together by string. So I did.
They printed a joint. Look at that. It's amazing.
And this is the exact same model, which I did at the same time, but I did a little piece under the elbow, tiny one on the other side. It's a little hard to see because I don't have contrast. And I did a piece for the coat.
Yep.
And I noticed the chin did this sort of drop-off thing. So I put a very tiny wedge in there. Unfortunately, there's just not enough contrast. But little things like that, like this one individual piece, I can clip off super clean. I actually did it so I could do it here. So, and there you go. Took 2 little snips. I am going to have to like clean up the side, but then you have this really free, unsupported arm.
But here's the really cool thing about that. You can go to Walmart, Amazon, hobby store, get a set of small files, and fix that.
Yep.
You can do sandpaper.
Yep.
Sandpaper is great. Problem with sandpaper is it wears out, and trying to have something sturdy enough to get on that spot is difficult with sandpaper.
Yeah.
If you have a little file, cheap $7 files at Walmart, which I've done, and they've broken. But
it's a screwdriver, but in principle, I can get into finer points that I would with a fine file.
Yeah.
Which I can't get between the legs of this thing with sandpaper, which this is another one done by the same designer. And I picked this one initially to print because that requires no support material. There's no overhangs, no downward hanging pieces, and it printed like spring. And I put a little bit of a dark wash on there just so you could kind of see some of the detail.
Yeah.
So I mean, and the other big thing is your filament.
Josh, do I see a twin behind you?
No, that's a seahorse, dude, from the Monterey Bay Aquarium.
It looks like this angle.
It's a bit different.
I can see it now better.
No, they look exactly the same, Josh. No, it's exactly the same. I see it.
On your camera, yes.
Yeah.
But as I was saying for filament, so this is Amazon Basics. I did a little Viking ship.
Nice.
Well, thank you for my wife's school, their faculty, what have you. But you can maybe just see with my shaky ass hands.
Yep.
Do the two-handed approach where it started to fail on the overhangs.
Yep.
Where if I do the same thing in AMZ, I don't get it. So then I did another little cut piece here. And helps if I can pay attention to the orientation. And yeah, so then I don't get the failure. So I like to add little pieces like this little guy originally had tons of stringing, and the nose would just string like crazy because it sticks out. He's got a pretty huge nose. So I put a slight angled piece in the septum, under the chin, places like that, and just really incredibly small. Like, I looked at the specs for my printer, went with the narrowest piece I could, and it would still print, and just work that in, and yeah. So you can modify a print like the Sorcerer. If you don't love it, well, you love the print, but you don't love how it prints, you can add little pieces here and there and get it to work. Or if you have like an arm that's out like here, just shift it, cut it off, change the angle, Yeah.
See, this guy's arm sticks straight out.
Yeah.
The other arm is got a bend to it. So, I mean, I did supports. That was printed all like this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it sucked that I had to do so much support on it. But
Yeah.
I did custom supports, and then my custom supports in Idea Maker, I actually took it down as low as it would go, which is 1 mil.
Yeah.
I did not bring water out to drink.
Yeah. With one like that, because you do have such outreaching arms that are so well defined, I'd actually just cut them off the model and then have that as beside it and be like, well, do it on a separate print, be blasphemous, and print it on a raft with just the limbs sticking straight up. You cut it off the raft and then glue it to the model afterwards.
Well, and a lot of the ones that I did, obviously I don't have them because they were given to people whenever I did my D&D.
Yeah.
So the people that were in my campaign, because I was the DM, and so I printed them one. I was like, all right, well, what's your character? What do you want? And I actually customized them for them. I went in and cut this, that, and the other, and I did shields for some of them. And the shield, I did not print the shield on them. I actually, if I had a shield, I actually cut the shield off, printed it flat, glued the shield on.
Yeah.
Because then there was a nice flat spot right here where the shield was supposed to go.
I'm a big fan of the flat versus the tab too, because it allows you to play with the orientation.
Yep.
But yeah, almost every mini that I've ever tried to print that had a shield that didn't attach to the to the torso or to a thigh or something like that, it fails. Because I mean, like, look at my arm. This has some, and then it tapers down, and then it flares out. So it's a weak point. It's like
and weak points is you also have to deal with the arm. If you put supports in there, you can't get to the supports because the shield's in the way.
Yeah, so, that's exactly the problem that I was having when I was printing this little figure that has a shield on the side. That's exactly the problem I was having. Is every time I would try and get in and cut off the supports for that little figure, I was breaking the arm off because you try and get in there to cut off the support and it just snaps the whole arm off.
And I understand some people not wanting to cut things off. I mean, this is a actual pewter traditional tabletop gaming piece.
Yep.
And as you can see, the character has this big old battle axe, and the hands and the axe itself. God, I am really bad at looking at my screen and the camera. And so the axe and the hands are actually a separate piece that are glued on. So, I mean, this is a $15 model. I still had to glue things on. I love the paint job on this thing. It's so pretty. But yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to hack things off and attach them later, because these minis are not going to be amazing to print because of the scale you're printing at. I mean, when you scale up or scale down, prints get funny. I mean, like the dragon we were talking about, it gets spaghetti under the chin. But when you print it less than 3 centimeters, you get no spaghetti under the chin.
Yep.
And the scale is such a big thing. But yeah, cooling, the quality of the filament you're using, it's really a test for your printer. I mean, you have to be dialed in. You cannot have your settings up, because you will get just rough spaghetti looking.
You're going to get frustrated. Plain and simple.
Garbage.
Oh, like you would have garbage. I mean,
hey, let me ask you guys. I need your opinions here, because there's one more technique that I've seen and heard of. And I've heard of this before, but what brought it to my mind recently is I have a buddy. His name's Ridge. He has a YouTube channel that's called Mechanical Ninjaneer. So it's a epic name, right? So great.
Yeah, I don't know.
So he's got this channel.
I want to check it out based on name.
Just based on the name. He does a lot of really just, I mean, he's a strange character, but he's a cool guy.
Aren't we all?
So he's got this channel called Mechanical Engineer.
Humble always.
And a couple months ago, he was talking about he likes to play Monopoly with his family. And when he was younger, there wasn't enough Monopoly pieces, or he didn't like Monopoly pieces, or they would get lost or something. He found his own Monopoly piece. He found like a little minifigure G.I. Joe thing, and he would use that to play Monopoly. Well, you know, now he's all grown up and stuff, and he decided to make his own Monopoly piece that he could play Monopoly with. And he made this whole thing where he made this like, you know, carrying case out of like wood, and he like finished it, and it's got like you know, felt and stuff, felt lined inside, so he can show up to this party with this little tiny case and be like, you ready to play some Monopoly, and like whip it open like that, but about this big. And so anyways, the way that he made his model, he went in and designed the model, and then he took the model and he cut it cut it in half vertically, and then laid it down and printed it in 2 separate pieces, and then glued those 2 pieces together. Yeah. And so you're always going to see that seam, but the question is, does that seam matter? How precise does it have to be? Because I see that being a really, really solid strategy for printing it without supports, and having it actually come out really nice. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, that works.
Yeah.
The downfall to doing that is when you put your glue together, depending on your glue. Now I've used Gloop for gluing stuff together, and I've used super glue. Super glue, if you actually glue PLA together, I don't know if you can see the white tip on that.
Mm-hmm.
It does not react properly with PLA, which is what you're going to be printing with. And that white is from super glue.
Yeah, you get like that weird kind of frosty burn.
Now, if that's the look you want, perfect.
Yeah. I mean, you could
for
be
ice elemental.
Yep.
But then you also have to worry about the squeeze out.
Yep.
And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about there, if you've ever done woodworking or anything, you glue something to get together and you clamp it, the more you put in there, the more is going to come out. So you put it in there and it's just squeezes right out between the seams, and then you've got to worry about that.
Yep.
So I got one more topic of conversation before we kind of call this stream, unless you guys have anything else you wanted to add. But one more thing I want to talk about, because here is, you guys have brought up something that's actually a really big debated point in the 3D printing community, and that is the topic of finishing 3D prints. Because I myself am a firm believer in, I know that I am not very skilled with modeling. I'm not artistic. I'm very mathematical. Geometric shapes make a lot of sense to me. I can design a part and it's going to work and be functional, even if it's not very pretty. But to me, that means that when I print something, I print it and it's done. I don't like having to finish my 3D print. I don't like having to sand stuff down and prime it and paint it and do all that work, because what you guys are talking about, you know, having that little burned, frosted, whatever from the CYA glue, from your cyanoacrylate super glue, is that even an issue if you're just going to be sanding it down and painting it anyways? And something like a minifigure, is something that maybe you would want to sand down and paint, or maybe not sand down, but at least paint. And in which case, a little bit of super glue, a little bit of sandpaper, take out the squeeze out, and then, you know, you paint it and it's fine. You don't notice it. Because one issue that I have with
what I would do with to get the squeeze out, I would use a cloth, like an old rag like this. This is just an old white t-shirt, and rubbing alcohol, and just kind of wipe it off before it dries, if you can.
And if you wrap it on the end of something pointy, you can get a finer edge. which is important when you're dealing with something super tiny.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're just wiping the whole surface. But to touch on what Chris said, I mean, with minifigs, a lot of people really enjoy the painting. And part of it is, I mean, let's be honest. How much detail can you see on the camera? It's too small. It doesn't really cast shadows. So, I mean, a lot of people do washes. This is just a simple black wash. It's really thinned out paint. But then suddenly there's shadow, there's texture. So for minifigs, just naked, you lose so much. I mean, this one has a little bit deeper detail, and you can't really see much by comparison.
No.
So at the very least on a minifig, I throw a wash because...
Now, tell for those people that don't know what a wash is, Josh, tell them how to do a wash.
So you can make a wash.
Isn't that classic thing in the movies? Like, I mean, I know obviously, but if you'll tell everybody else what it is, because they obviously don't know.
Yeah, because that doesn't sound arrogant as poop. So I get to mock him. So this is just really basic black paint. So if I take a little bit
acrylic.
And it might be, can I get it to squeeze out without dumping everywhere? Okay. So that's just, it's a solid black. Whereas I have the Citadel wash. They're pricey, but they make good stuff. So I'm just going to dip my finger in that. And what you'll notice is it's just runny liquid. And the nice thing about it is it's paint, but it's so thinned out that it gets into all your details, your cracks and everything. Because, I mean, that goes on very thin. But what's cool is if I hold up my naked finger, you can't see fingerprint. You can maybe get fingerprint with this one.
Scan it right now.
So, or anything useful. So, yeah, it makes those really, really almost imperceptible details that unless you have better than 20/20, you aren't going to see. And I mean, it makes them all pop because minis can't really cast shadows well. They block light, all that jazz, but it's at such a small scale, you don't really see it. So the washes really create that. So a pure naked mini that's 3D printed, you need a wash. You need something because you're just, why are you going to do that really amazing detail? The hour worth of stuff we just talked about to make it work, and then have, hey, look, it's light in the shape of a figure. You can see no detail. It's really just light. I mean,
So could you just take like a regular acrylic paint and just water it down?
Yeah. Now,
Josh, would you recommend water or rubbing alcohol?
If you're using acrylic paint, since they're water-based in the first place, just use water. Some people like to use alcohol paints. You get some interesting finishes, and they dry really fast. But I'm cheap because I need to justify this to my wife. Now, my wife is not a horrible person. Do not get me wrong. But, hey, honey, I just spent $500 on paint. Hey, Chris, how well would that go over in your house? Aaron? So,
I think I've been sleeping
on paint.
For a few days.
Yeah. So I like the acrylics. They're easy to get because you can do fancy paints. Like I have my little Citadel. But, I mean, this is a couple bucks for almost nothing. Versus, I went to Walmart and got Craft Smart, and this was $1. Whereas this amount might be $5 from Citadel. So, I mean, I go with the acrylic just because it's budget friendly. I can do a lot more with it. And when you get to that scale, the quality of the paint does make a difference, but it's more if it's getting lumpy, if it's getting old. As long as it's good, it's smooth, you're fine. Although the alcohol paints, you can get a lot finer detail, but I can't paint the iris and a pupil without a sewing needle and going cross-eyed. because the eyes are just so small. I mean, can I even get this to focus to show that I painted the eyes white? Not so much.
No.
Because, I mean, the eyes on this thing are like half a millimeter by a millimeter. I mean, you can do the really high-end ones if you've got, I mean, the magnifying glasses and the fancy goggles. Then, yes, okay, you can do that detail, but a lot of people don't have a steady enough hand or the eyesight for it. What do you got there, Aaron?
Yeah, see, that's perfect.
And how much were those shiny things? Is
Use
that
your
your
word.
So this one right here is $4.99.
Yep.
$4.99. $4.99. $4.99. $4.99 for those
This
ones.
place could have just said $4.99.
Well, I wasn't sure. And
$1.
this one,
$1.
and this is airbrush cleaner,
$40.
but this one is $8.50 for this.
Yep.
But these are because I've got an airbrush and I've yet to use it because I wanted to make sure I'm not clogging it up with something.
Yeah.
Since I've not had the expertise of actually doing airbrush for years.
Yeah.
Because
Now,
what I usually do when I finish a model
Yeah.
or I finish something, I don't look. Ace, it's their name brand. It's cheaper.
Yeah. With minis, I have mixed feelings on that.
Well, no, and this is not me talking about for minis, but this is just this is
for
bigger
general
things.
purpose on a print, yeah, they're awesome.
Like something like this.
Yeah.
Filler primer. Gray.
Yeah, no, that's
you
fine.
can see the flaws in it better.
Yeah.
And actually, if you want to do it to the filler primer to a mini, set back, I don't know, 2 feet away from it and just go just
I'm going to
small.
argue with you on that one just because mini, if you get a little bit of stippling or anything like that, it makes a huge difference on a mini. So
yeah.
the one place I will shell out the stupid money is on the primer. She can't hear me and she probably won't watch this. So if you get the Citadel brand primer, it's like $20 a can. That being said, you can do a hell of a lot of minis with it because it is such a really fine dispersed spray that you don't get chalky, you don't get any kind of stippling, bubbling, anything like that, which you do on a more conventional or a cheaper spray paint.
Well, and that's why.
Not knocking Ace, it's good stuff.
Oh,
But
no, it is.
Something this scale, you got to buy the fancy stuff.
But that's why I got this stuff. You can see that air bubble moving around compared to acrylic paint, which is a little more viscous.
Yeah.
So it's more of, and by viscous I mean like molasses, people.
Yeah.
This is more of a liquid based kind of like watery compared to that, because in the airbrush, which I've still yet to use, I got it for Christmas a couple years back, and I've been terrified of clogging it up.
Yeah.
Because I've seen airbrush paints, and they were expensive on some that I looked at. And actually, was it these two? I actually was, well, 2 of them. The blue is one of them. I actually got in for a Secret Santa for Christmas last year at work. So, but do you see that tiny, tiny, tiny nozzle?
Yep.
So the nozzle itself is an interesting thing. There's that fine, fine point right there.
Yep.
Which, when you adjust the things and you pull this back, it retracts that really fine point. But then it makes the hole bigger or smaller.
Yep.
And that is how that works.
Yeah. And you do not put garbage paint into that.
No.
You cannot put my $1 acrylic in there, even if you thin it out to nothing.
Hence why I have been terrified of clogging this up, because if you've ever watched Chin Beard, aka Punish Props,
Yeah.
he's cleaned these in a vibrating
Yellow.
base. Like you take these apart, these come apart, and I don't want to clog it up. But one way to clean it out is I take that cleaner.
You can go in. You can go see Daddy.
There.
I got a cake delivery.
Nice. And once you've sprayed your paint in there, and you just drop a little bit in there. You don't do a whole lot. But once you get that done, then you put your cleaner in there, and then you just clean by spraying. And that's how that works. So, yes, I have it. I've not used it yet because I'm terrified.
Yep, fair enough.
And you can get these little guys. You can get multiple ones of these, or you can just get one and you can kind of clean it out. And you can use it to drop this, or you can use it for your cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
But
Josh, did you say there was something that you wanted to talk about before we end?
So I want to go a little off subject to 3D printing.
Not allowed. This is AC show. Only 3D.
Yeah, I know you might throw up or die. But we talked about gardening, and you didn't die last time I talked to you guys. So,
I guess you're right.
But my little off subject is with the minis. If you just print it, what have you, and you really want to make some, don't feel bad to do alternatives. Back when there was a Toys R Us, childhood dying, they sold little mini Zelda toys. So I just put them on little bases. So if you want to be Zelda in a game, you can be. So I mean, I love D&D. It's kind of my favorite happy place because it's let's hang out with people. Let's learn communication skills. Let's learn group skills and leadership skills and economics. Because wait, my character's got to pay for food.
Yep, and you've got only so much energy you can have.
Yep. So, I mean, finding alternatives is also good. Like, I hand sculpted this one. This is actually from an online comic called Womp. And this is one of the little main characters. So I made it for him because he was awesome. Or even just glue gun and paint. This is a water elemental. I just went crazy with the paint and clear gloss.
Yep.
But this is glue gun. And it has a paper clip in it. So, I mean, another example, glue gun. And I sculpted a little tiny skull inside.
Your fire elemental. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, 3D is awesome. If you can do it, awesome. If you can't do it or you don't have the skills, or you just get frustrated and lose your poop about it, and you don't want to buy the injected molded Wizards of the Coast 10 cents worth of plastic that's going to charge you $5, there's alternatives. I mean, have fun.
Hey, you're going to get demonetized. Oh, wait. Not an issue. I wholeheartedly agree with that. There are so many alternatives that you can do to change up. I mean, you can go get little minifigures anywhere. The quarter machines at the grocery stores, the little machines where you put the quarters in, it pops out the little capsule that has a little figure in it. Perfect. The dollar store is great. Army Men. I mean, you're kidding me? Army Men, some hot glue, and some spray paint.
Little toy kits.
Yep.
Absolutely. Awesome. I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
Well, I
just have fun.
I think we're getting on time that I'm gonna have to sign out because I got kids and they're going a little crazy. Don't judge me. It's only 9:30, and there's
I'm
no
just gonna
school.
point and
So.
laugh. I'm not gonna judge. I'm just gonna ha ha ha.
It's 11:30 here, so.
Well, your kids are already asleep, probably.
Oh yeah, he's asleep.
My kids are not.
Which that's
So,
what I'm gonna go do once we get off here. So.
Well, next week we're going to be over on Aaron's channel. So thank you guys, everybody who joined us for the stream tonight. I really appreciate it. This was a really fun stream. We talked about a lot of stuff. If you guys have any ideas or comments, I mean, if you think that we're completely wrong about what we mentioned for our tips for 3D printing minifigures, please let us know. If you have any questions or things that you'd like us to cover in future streams, also let us know. Feel free to send emails or leave comments on videos. Hit us up on Twitter or Facebook, and help us to shape the streams in the future. I really appreciate everybody who was here, is here, watching this later. Everybody, thank you guys so much for joining us.
And thank you guys for having me on the show.
Yep. And tune in, and we will have Jeffrey Wright next week. So he was supposed to be on last week. He was in the hospital, and so he will be on next week. So stay tuned. Some fun stuff next week. So thank you, everybody. Catch you then. Till then, happy making. Take care. Bye.
See you guys.